Dear my learners of P5 class, once again, we are still proceeding with the climate of Uganda. This is teacher Kagans Moses, and in our previous lesson, at core climate. Reason why we started with it, we said most parts of Uganda experience tropical climate. I twisted one of the questions in our activity. When you're at home there, and that question was about why do most parts of Uganda experience tropical climate? And something is very simple. When you're looking at the location of Uganda, we realized most parts of Uganda lie in the tropics. That is Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So that's one reason, that's the major reason why most parts of Uganda experience tropical climate. Two, I emphasize these things because they are very important. When we talk about climate, we mean two things. That is rainfall and temperature. And we call these ones aspects or components of climate. Therefore, today, we're gonna look at another type of climate, or we're gonna look at another climatic region in Uganda. Yes. So today, we're gonna look at what we call equatorial climatic region or equatorial climate. And by the end of this lesson, I expect you be able to describe equatorial climate, to state the characteristics of the equatorial climate, to locate equatorial climate on the map of Uganda, or the equatorial climatic region on the map of Uganda. Then, lastly, I will expect you to identify economic activities that are carried out in the equatorial climatic region. Well, in our session 1, I want us to know how we can describe equatorial climatic region, and just a simple activity here. Think of what can help one to identify the equatorial climatic region. Remember, all this based on the characteristics. So, how can somebody be able to identify an equatorial climatic region? Take some minutes, think, share with your neighbor there. I can see you're well seated in your comfortable sofa sets there with your brothers. So you can share a bit. Well, what have you come up with? What are those things? We can try to compare with what I have here. So you can check equatorial climate or equatorial climatic region is hot and wet throughout the year. Any region that is hot and wet throughout the year, we refer to it as an equatorial climatic region, okay? So what are the characteristics? What are those things that will show you that such an area experiences equatorial climate? One, it is hot and wet throughout the year. Then secondly, it experiences rainfall throughout the year. Thirdly, you realize that it has two heavy maximum rainfall seasons, and we refer to that as a double maxima. Meaning the two seasons that are experienced in that region are experience very, very heavy rainfall. Then it mainly receives convectional rainfall. Remember in P4 you learned about the types of rainfall. We have three. And in this region, equatorial climatic region, it mainly receives convectional rainfall. Then the temperature is high, especially during equinox. Do you still remember what equinox is? Yes, quickly, who can tell us what does the term equinox mean? You realize that equinox, we say this is the period when the sun is overhead the equator. So during that period when the sun is overhead the equator, the temperatures are very high in an equatorial climatic region. Then somebody can, for instance, ask himself, why? Why do those areas have high temperatures? And yes, we say they are always wet. The temperatures are high simply because the sun hits those areas direct. It hits them directly, that's why you find the temperatures are high. So when you find such areas that have these characteristics, then we conclude such an area experiences equatorial climate. Okay, are we together? I hope you're following. Yes, we can proceed. So when you check on this diagram here, it is showing you how such areas experience heavy rainfall. You can see the clouds, how the atmosphere is looking. All that is showing that such an area experiences very heavy rainfall. Is that okay? Yes, let's continue. Yes, in our session 2, I want us to identify what are those parts in Uganda, what are those areas in Uganda that experience equatorial climate. So which parts of Uganda experience equatorial climate according to the above characteristics? Yes, we have seen things that can help you to identify a region that experiences equatorial climate. So, which parts do you think? Yes, you have moved around Uganda, you have been on tours with your parents at school. Can you find out such places in Uganda that have such rainfall? Or maybe you were in such a place and you realized it started raining and it was heavy like that. Okay, so we can proceed. Yes, I believe you came up with such areas in Uganda, such districts, okay, like Jinja, Kampala, Kalangala, Mpigi, and Buyikwe. Somebody can think of, what do you think? Why do you think these areas, Jinja, Kampala, Kalangala, experience equatorial climate? One thing, just the word equatorial, you realize it comes from the word equator, okay? So some of these districts are crossed by the equator. Then some are bordered by very thick forests and very large water bodies. That's why you realize they experience such heavy rainfall that is leading to equatorial climate, okay? So as we proceed, you realize that this is a map trying to show all the climatic regions, and in this case, we shall single out the equatorial climate. What are those areas? We talked of Jinja, we talked of Buyikwe. So basing on this key, okay, you can realize this green is standing in for those areas that experience equatorial climate. And as you check all these areas around here, you can see all this green. It shows you that these areas experience equatorial climate, okay? And take, for instance, around here, this is where we have the source of River Nile, and this is where we have Jinja. Around this place, we have areas like Buyikwe, and then as we proceed, still in central Uganda here, that's where we get districts like Mpigi. Okay. And the whole of this region is what we call the equatorial climatic region, okay? Are we together? Yes, we can now proceed. Yes, and in our session 3, just the way I've looked at the heavy rainfall in the other diagram, which activities, which economic activities, since this region is hot and wet throughout the year, which economic activities are suitable for it? If you are a citizen there, which economic activity would you carry out in such an area that receives heavy rainfall, receives a double maximum? Yes, you can still brainstorm with your neighbor there in the sitting room, okay? Yes, because in this world we need children who can think. We can't spoon feed you that everything we shall come here and tell you. Take time and think about those economic activities that are suitable in the equatorial climatic region. I think 1 minute is enough, okay? Yes, I can see somebody is playing. Can you concentrate, please? Because this work is very important. Well, the minute is done. So we can now compare with what I have here. Yes, so you realize since that region experiences heavy rainfall, it encourages all these activities. One, crop growing, because all crops need rainfall to grow well. Since rainfall is there, therefore, crop growing can be carried out. We have lumbering. Do you still remember what lumbering is? Lumbering, if you recall, this is the cutting down of mature trees for timber. It is different from deforestation. That's why I want you to take note. Lumbering is the cutting down of mature trees for timber, okay? So this is one of the economic activities that can be carried out there. Since that region experiences too much rainfall, it encourages the growth of thick vegetation, and therefore we can have very many big trees that can encourage lumbering. Then we have tourism. It can also be carried out there. Since that area experiences heavy rainfall, it encourages the growth of thick forests. Therefore, these forests can attract the tourists. It also encourages some other physical features to develop there, and therefore all these attract the tourists. We have mining. This can be also carried out. Then we have fishing. Since that area experiences heavy rainfall, therefore it has those water bodies that can encourage fishing. Okay? Did you also have the same activities? Therefore, tomorrow when you become an adult, or even right now, you can advise your parents that when you settle in such an area, equatorial climatic region, such activities can be favorable. Is that okay? Well, now, since we said this region encourages crop growing, what do you think are the suitable crops that can be grown there? Okay, so just like you realize this region experiences too much rainfall, and we are saying it encourages crop growing. You realize these are the crops that are suitable in such an area that experiences rainfall throughout the year. We have the coffee, we have tea, we have sugarcane, we have oil palm, rubber, banana. And you realize all these are perennial crops. Everyone say perennial crops. So what are perennial crops? In SST, we can define perennial crops as crops that can take more than a year to mature, okay? So when you realize all these ones here, they can take more than a year to mature. Why? That region, since it has a heavy rainfall, it can support the growth of crops throughout, okay? So one thing I need to emphasize here, okay? One, there is something I didn't hint on. Since the region experiences heavy rainfall, you realize people in this region build their houses with slanting roofs. Reason? To allow water to flow off the roofs. So somebody can surprisingly ask you, why do people in the equatorial climatic region build houses with slanting roofs? Very simple. To allow water to flow off the what? Off the roofs, okay? So as we continue, maybe I can still refer you to the previous lesson about tropical climate. We had there some pictures about some of these crops and the economic activities. Therefore, you can go back and check in the tropical climatic region lesson, okay? So I'm going to leave you some activity here, okay, that I expect you to write so neatly. I love neat work. Therefore, you have to sit properly and produce neat work, okay? And I won't take this opportunity to thank you for listening, but help your parents to do house chores. Thank you so much.